From London, I'm Rochelle Travers, and this is The Standard. After an incredible 2 weeks, the Paris Olympics 2024 has officially come to an end. The UK finished a respectable 7th on the medal table with a total of 65 medals, an improvement on the 64 from Tokyo. The total matches our medal haul from London 2012, and is the joint third highest for Team GB at a single games behind Rio 2016. There's no denying that the Olympics captured the world once again and gifted us countless iconic sporting moments. But did Paris 2024 deliver everything it promised? Here to discuss this in more detail is the Evening Standard sports correspondent Matt Majendie, who joins me from Paris. Matt, the Paris Olympics 2024 is officially over. Did it deliver?
Yeah, I think it actually was fantastic. I think President Macron said magnifique, which sums it up pretty well, because I think there was, leading up to it, there was some doubts that, there'd been a push towards the far right politically, and there was a lot of uncertainty about that, a lot of protests. There were issues about the Seine, where they were going to have the opening ceremony, but events like the triathlon, and there was sewage in there, and people, so there's all these doubts and stuff. But actually, when it came to it, it was superb. It's one of the most iconic games I can remember in terms of the venues, backdrop of a Palace of Versailles, backdrop of the Eiffel Tower, and that was absolutely superb. But beyond that was how well it was supported and followed. It kind of had echoes of London 2012, and not just from the Parisians and the French, but this international invasion of people, and such a good feel-good factor for 2.5 weeks.
What do you think were some of the best sporting moments from the Games?
It's so hard to pick, I sort of feel bad singling out different moments. But in terms of the ones I experienced in the flesh, from a British perspective, I think my favourite was Alex Yee in the triathlon. Now, lovely guy and a great athlete, but he looked like he was going to take the silver medal in the men's triathlon behind Hayden Wilde, and he'd got sort of 15 seconds clear of him, looked no way of clawing it back. But Alistair Brownlee himself, like a 2-time Olympic champion, shouted, don't give up or something from the sidelines, and he took this on board and decided to do one final throw of the dice, and suddenly it almost looked like Wilde had stopped and Yee had sort of hit the afterburners, and he came past and won this gold medal.
And we can actually hear a clip of Alex Yee after he won that gold medal in the triathlon now.
My coach and I always say, have the tools to race. I've raced enough times. I think, you've just got to believe in yourself and not give up, to be honest. I think, it's not over until it's over, and anything can happen. And this kind of racing is hard, it's brutal, especially with the heat and the conditions we had. So I think, for me to be able to, kind of run into the race and just think, I'm going to give myself, one last go to do this and see what happens. And it happened, and pretty magical moment and really special.
And what was great was it happened at a very similar time to at the rowing, which was another great moment of the women's quadruple sculls, who were behind until the very last minute of their race. And in the space of, I think, barely half an hour, he'd won these 2 thrilling gold medals. So I think from a GB perspective, those are the ones that stand out. But actually, some of my favourite moments involved French athletes. And I'd gone down to the BMX racing to see Beth Shriver, who's the world #1 world champion, and we expected her to win gold in her race, but she didn't. It went wrong in the final. But the race before that was the men's BMX, and it was a French 1, 2, 3, and Macron again was there, the French president. The crowd of about 15,000 went absolutely crazy. The winner threw his bike, the guy with the bronze medal threw his helmet into the stands, and the whole place erupted. And those were so special. The French moments, despite me not having necessarily an affiliation for these athletes, they weren't from my nation or whatever it was. It was great to see everyone get so behind it.
Team GB came in 7th overall. Do you think they'll be happy with that result?
I don't think they'll like the 7th. It's very hard to be critical, because essentially they've come away with 65 medals. Now that has only been betted once before. So 65 is their sort of ballpark. I think they've been 63 to 67 now for 4 games in a row. What they won't like is that position 7th in the table. They would have had expectations, I think, to be higher. And the reason they're not is they didn't get, as many gold medals, only 14. And you say only 14. But what's tough is just totally tiny fractions of a second that separated them from Adam Peaty winning a gold, from Matt Richards winning a gold, from Josh Kerr winning a gold. And it's, if those three had come off and those were decided by less than a second, I think combined, we would have been fifth in the medal table. So I think, yes, they would have liked a bit more gold there, but I think they'd be pretty satisfied with 65 medals. That they were set a target of 50 to 70 by UK Sport, 50 on the lower end, 70 if things went crazily well. So at 65, they're at the high end of that. So they should be pretty satisfied.
Which nations do you think had a particularly good Olympics this time around?
I mean, you would always expect the US and China to be at the top, and they were. The US had the most medals, but both nations had 40 each. I think I was particularly impressed by France and the Netherlands. The Netherlands had a terrible start to the games, and it was almost like a bring them back home kind of thing. I think in the Dutch media, there were no medals, no golds for quite a few days into it, and they suddenly ended up with 15 golds and leapfrogged over the GB team, despite the fact they had half the number of overall medals. And I think there'll be delight for France that they had their best games in memory, which you'd imagine they would do, being the hosts, much like we did in London 2012. We sort of catapulted ourselves further up. Now, they had 16 golds and 64 medals overall, so that was pretty fantastic. But I'm also always impressed by Australia, despite the size of it, population-wise, not massive. And they've very much followed the UK Sport British model of how they're doing things. They're taking a lot of people from the UK and that support structure for what they've done. And they did very well, finishing fourth in the medal table, 18 golds and 53 overall.
Who do you think are some of the emerging stars to look out for in the future based on their performance in the Games?
I mean, there are so many people here that it's quite hard to single them out. There are so many people who, this is their first Games, massively inexperienced, so much more to come. But people I get really excited by. There's a girl called Phoebe Gill who does the 800 meters. Now, she opted not to do the European Championships because she was taking her A levels, which is sort of puts into context of what age she is. And while she didn't make the final of the 800 meters, she was in the semi-finals and ran fantastically well. And she could be like a superstar to match Keely Hodgkinson, who won the gold here for Britain. So I'm really excited to see what she can do. And also Sky Brown is another one, still so incredibly young. At her second Olympics, she's got another bronze medal. But what's exciting about her, she's done that in the skateboarding. Now in LA, she's aiming to do skateboarding and surfing. And she only just missed out qualifying for the surfing, I think, for Britain here. So the excitement, if she could double up in LA and compete in skateboarding and surfing and seemingly have a chance of medaling in both, would be very, very impressive.
Los Angeles hosts the next Olympics in 2028. What do Team GB need to do between now and then?
I think just more of the same. They're heading in the right direction. There seems to be genuine excitement in some of the sports, rowing in particular. They had a catastrophic Tokyo Olympics, very good here. But I think they're even more excited about their under-23 program, the talent that's going to come through there, I think particularly on the men's side. So, and there's some, superstars we saw Emma Finnegan in the track cycling. She's only 21 years old, and 25, she still won't have peaked as an athlete. So I think it's about pushing what we're doing, striving for further excellence. But I feel that the UK sports model with the National Lottery funding is good. And I think we'll be there or thereabouts again in 2028.
Matt, you've reported on a number of the Olympics now. How did Paris compare to previous years? And what will be your lasting memories from the Games this time around?
It was brilliant. I mean, it really was brilliant. It's different to a lot of games in that what Paris did was they sort of built the games around the city. So they didn't worry about too much additional stadiums. Like London 2012, we had quite a big new Olympic park open up. And that's obviously used very well. But so many other games have had these massive white elephants, like in Rio de Janeiro, these venues that were built for the games that are barely used ever since. What Paris did was only build, I think, one main new venue, which is the Aquatic Centre for the diving. But the rest was the stuff that was already there. So it built within that. And what I loved was the iconic backdrops. You could go to beach volleyball and watch that with the Eiffel Tower behind it. You could go to the equestrian events and there was the Palace of Versailles, or you could go to taekwondo and fencing, and this was inside this amazing Grand Palais with this incredible sort of glass roof. So all of these incredible backdrops. I don't think there's ever been a more beautiful Olympic Games than this one.
Let's go to the ads. Coming up in part 2, The Standard's Robert Dex discusses the most talked about moments from the Games and gives his verdict on the closing ceremony.
One of the great joys of the Olympics, isn't it, is watching somebody knowing that you will not think about this person, this sport, for another 4 years till the next Olympics. But at that moment, it is the most amazing thing on your TV that you're watching. And you're willing these people on, and you're pretending to everyone else in the room that you know how you score skateboarding or bouldering or whatever it may be.
The Standard podcast will be back in just a moment. Welcome back. The Paris 2024 Olympics came to an end in spectacular fashion last night. The closing ceremony had performances from Billie Eilish, Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, as well as the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Hollywood movie star Tom Cruise even glided down from the roof into the stadium in a Mission Impossible style to take the Olympic flag back with him to LA, who will host the next Games in 2028. Here to give his verdict on the closing ceremony and discuss some of the most talked about and interesting moments from the Olympics is the Evening Standard's arts correspondent, Robert Dax.
The closing ceremony is such a weird thing, isn't it? Because it goes on forever and ever. And at the start, you just see all these athletes, pouring into the stadium. And what I always find odd is that it's amazing the difference the tracksuit makes. You're sort of peering out and going, who the heck's that? And I haven't seen that person. And it's because you're used to seeing them sort of sat down in kayaks or running past you at God knows what speed or leaping over stuff or playing football. So there's always that weird sort of recognition thing where you see them and they're all relaxed as well for the first time in 2 weeks. So that was amazing. Closing ceremonies are always a bit odd, aren't they? Because they're sort of a handover to the next event. So a lot of it was actually about LA. So, Snoop Dogg finally did something beyond sit in the crowd and just watch people. It sort of made sense. That's why you're here. And there's been a lot of, I was watching the women's football final, which the USA won. And I was in Spain for last week, so I had quite an odd Olympics watching experience. So I watched that on Spanish TV, and they kept cutting repeatedly to Tom Cruise in the crowd, even when there was stuff going on in the pitch. And it was like, fair enough, I can imagine you doing it once, but why do you keep showing me Tom Cruise? And then obviously last night, Tom Cruise made quite an entrance, and it was like, oh, right, so that's what it's been building up to. So yeah, I thought it was really good, considering all the sort of heartache that was in the opening ceremony, and the weather was so appalling, and it was just like, oh God, is this the start of really bad games? It was a brilliant ending. The weather was really kind to them. The crowd in the stadium obviously massively up for it, and it was sort of a fitting ending to it. What had been a really good games, I think.
There's been so many highlights over the past 2 weeks. What do you think were some of the most talked about moments from the Olympics, and what were some of your favourites?
It's funny, isn't it? Because there is so much sport, it can all become a bit of a blur. And it's only when you see what people pick out on Twitter and stuff that you think, oh God, yeah, that was amazing. I've already forgotten about that. It only happened yesterday, because today we've already moved on to this other sport I know nothing about. Loads of stuff. I loved the super cool Turkish shooter, who has become a sort of total internet star, hasn't he? He's sort of slouching with one hand in his pocket while aiming. Just looks like without a care in the world. Though I think he has gone on and said, I might look calm, but there's storms going on inside of me. But that was quite old school as well, because some of the shooting guys can look a bit sort of RoboCop, with all the modern equipment, and he just had his glasses on and some earplugs, and he was just like the coolest looking customer. So that was brilliant. The men's 100 metres is always a big, big event, isn't it? It's always one of the things people look forward to, and it seems to come around quite early this Games. But that photo finish, with barely anything to separate, well, practically the whole field, but certainly the first three medalists, was just absolutely astounding. I saw some amazing time-lapse photography, and Noah Lyles, who got gold, you can see him at the back practically the whole way till the very last moment where suddenly, somehow, he gets some speed up and takes gold. I really, really enjoyed the mountain biking, Tom Pidcock, which was very early on. He won gold for Great Britain. And that was just a classic. I think he got a puncture, so he had to stop, and he was behind the guy in front for loads of it. And again, just from somewhere, something seemed to possess him, and you just saw him go past him, and you just knew he wasn't going to be caught. And it's just one of those moments where you see someone who's been obviously gearing up for something for their whole career, the last 4 years of dedicated training, and you can just see them thinking, do you know what, I'm not letting this go past me, I'm not letting this slip away, and just really going for it and winning gold. That was absolutely fantastic.
One of the best things about the Olympics is getting into all these strange and wonderful sports that you otherwise would never watch. What were some of those events for you?
Any of the climbing, because I was just like, how is this going to work? This just seems totally bizarre. And then you watch it and it makes perfect sense. And that was brilliant. And obviously helped, we won medals in it. Also, some of the sort of, I don't know how to describe it, some of the rowing, but we're used to rowing of being sort of 3 or 4 blokes looking quite stately in a canoe, or a couple of women. Some of the rowing, like they look like they're in sort of like some sort of war band about to attack somebody, and they're, storming a beach. Some of that is just so, because it's so intense. You sort of, for 20 seconds, these people are just perpetual motion in these tiny little boats that quite frankly look like they could tip over at absolutely any moment. That was fantastic. As I say, I watched some of it in Spain, which actually wasn't that much of a problem because you don't really understand a lot of these sports. We watched the men's volleyball final in Spain and it was getting tenser and tenser and you could hear the crowd getting up and up and up for it. And the scores were totting up and you get to that point, you think, right, I'm going to have to Google this. Like, how many points do you need in volleyball? How on earth do you win a volleyball game? Like, I didn't know you needed to be 2 clear points and all this sort of stuff. So volleyball was brilliant. I think stuff like BMX and skateboarding, which people are always sort of not laugh at, they sometimes poke fun at it, don't they? What's this doing in the Olympics? They were brilliant. I thought the skateboarding was absolutely fantastic, partly because they're so young and enthusiastic and they all seem to get on so well. But that was brilliant. So one of the great joys of the Olympics, isn't it, is watching somebody knowing that you will not think about this person on this sport for another 4 years till the next Olympics. But at that moment, it is the most amazing thing on your TV that you're watching and you're willing these people on and you're pretending to everyone else in the room that you know how you score skateboarding or bouldering or whatever it may be. But it's absolutely brilliant. And it does really make you think we should have much more sport on TV. You know, there is I know the Olympics is heightened and is different, but you know, I think there's a massive audience for some of these things. So hopefully we will see some more before we get to LA.
You can read more about these stories and others on our website, standard.co.uk. And that's it from this episode. This podcast will be back tomorrow at 4 p.m.